At 2:23 p.m. on September 19, 1944, Corporal Thomas Bennett crouched behind his M5 3-inch anti-tank gun, hidden in a hedgerow near Saint-Lô, France. In front of him, across an open field nearly 800 yards wide, 5 German Panther tanks were advancing slowly. Bennett's hands trembled as he watched them move. His gun crew had been locked into position for 6 long hours, silently observing the Panzers maneuver throughout the morning, waiting for the exact moment they would be close. Enough for a clean shot. Now that moment had arrived, and Bennett knew with absolute certainty that the textbook method would get every man there killed. The M5 was a solid weapon, accurate, reliable, and powerful when used correctly. Fired under proper conditions, it could penetrate 3 inches of armor at 1,000 yards, but properly meant firing within strict limits. A depression angle no lower than -5 degrees and an elevation no higher than 15. Those were the parameters defined by the gunnery manuals. Anything beyond that risked damaging the recoil system, possibly destroying the gun outright, and unquestionably voiding any maintenance protection. But the terrain made those rules useless. Bennett's gun sat 12 feet above the field, embedded in the hedgerow. The Panthers were advancing through a shallow depression, another 8 feet below ground level. That 20-foot vertical difference created a firing problem the manual never addressed. To stay within approved angles, Bennett would have to wait until the tanks climbed out of the depression and closed to 300 yards, maybe less. At that distance, the Panthers would see the muzzle flash instantly, lock onto the position, and destroy the gun with their first return shot. The Panther's frontal armor was 80 millimeters thick and sloped at 55 degrees, making it nearly immune to frontal fire. The M5 could penetrate it only under perfect conditions, and only if Bennett fired before the Germans detected him. His gun commander, Second Lieutenant James Walsh, was 24 years old and had been in France for just 8 weeks. Walsh knew the manual well. He kept telling Bennett to wait. Wait for proper range. Wait for the correct angle. Wait for the textbook shot. Bennett had 11 months of combat experience. He had fought in North Africa and fired at German tanks 23 times, scoring 17 hits. But he had never done what he was considering now. Never violated elevation limits. Never risked destroying his own weapon for a chance at survival. The manual was explicit. Maximum elevation 15 degrees. Anything beyond that could snap recoil springs, crack mounts, and turn the gun into scrap. But Bennett had spent 6 hours calculating angles, estimating distances, and studying the Panthers' movement. He knew their route. He knew the depression would hide them for another 8 minutes. After that, they would crest the rise and be too close. His crew would not survive. There was only one way to engage them safely now: raise the barrel to 32 degrees and fire a high-trajectory shot, dropping the shell onto the Panther's thin top armor. That armor was only 40 millimeters thick. A 3-inch armor-piercing round coming down steeply would punch through with ease. The cost was the recoil. At 32 degrees, the recoil forces would be brutal. The gun might survive 1 shot, maybe 3, but eventually something would break. Walsh continued warning him, insisting they follow doctrine. Bennett glanced at his loader, Rodriguez, a 20-year-old from Texas. Rodriguez looked terrified but ready. Bennett made his choice. He elevated the gun to 32 degrees. What followed over the next 4 minutes would permanently alter how American anti-tank crews fought German armor. The Panther was the most dangerous armored vehicle American forces faced in France in 1944. It wasn't the heaviest. That honor belonged to the Tiger, but it was faster, more numerous, and deadlier in most situations. By September, the German 5th Panzer Army had 200 operational Panthers in Normandy. American crews encountered them constantly. With sloped frontal armor nearly twice as thick as a Sherman's, Panthers were extremely hard to kill from the front. American 3-inch guns could penetrate them, but usually only under 500 yards, close enough for the Panther's 75mm gun to annihilate the firing position. The math was unforgiving. To kill a Panther, you had to let it get close enough to kill you first. Bennett had seen this play out repeatedly. In North Africa and France, he watched crews wait for textbook range, fire, sometimes score hits, and almost always take return fire. Panther gunners rarely missed. Their optics were excellent. If they saw your muzzle flash, you had seconds before a shell arrived. Bennett's battalion had lost 14 anti-tank guns in 3 weeks in North Africa alone. Most were destroyed after firing 1 or 2 rounds. Crews died where they stood. Doctrine called it shoot and scoot. Fire a shot or 2, then relocate before return fire. On paper, it worked. In reality, moving a 3,000-pound gun under fire was nearly impossible. Extraction took minutes, not seconds. Panthers could close hundreds of yards and fire multiple rounds in that time. Near St. Lo, Bennett's position had no escape route. The hedgerows were tight. The gun was dug in. They were staying put until either the Panthers were dead or they were waiting meant death. High-angle fire meant risk. Bennett chose risk. Walsh stood behind him, urging him to lower the barrel. Bennett ignored him. He loaded an armor-piercing round, sighted the lead Panther, and pulled the trigger. The recoil was violent. The gun bucked upward, metal screaming under stress. The recoil springs compressed with a sound Bennett would never forget. For a split second, he thought the mount would tear itself apart. The shell arced high, disappearing into the grey sky. Bennett counted seconds. 8 seconds later, the shell struck. It punched straight through the Panther's engine deck, shredding fuel lines and igniting oil. Flames erupted instantly. The other 4 Panthers halted in confusion, scanning hedgerows at ground level, searching for a threat that shouldn't exist. Bennett was already loading the second round. He fired again. 8 seconds. The shell came down onto the turret roof of the second Panther, 25mm thick. It went through effortlessly. Smoke poured from the hatches. The tank stopped moving. The remaining Panthers finally understood. They reversed, trying to escape the depression. Bennett fired 1 more round. It struck the third Panther's turret ring, jamming the traverse. The crew bailed out seconds later. 3 Panthers neutralized in 90 seconds. No return fire. The gun still worked. Walsh stared at Bennett and asked, "How did you know?" Bennett answered honestly. He didn't. He calculated, guessed and hoped. What neither of them realized was that other American gun crews had been watching. The technique spread quietly, gunner to gunner, corporal to corporal. No reports, no manuals, just survival knowledge passed hand to hand. High-angle fire worked because of geometry, gravity, and German assumptions. Panthers were armored where engineers expected threats, from the front and sides. The top armor existed only to stop shrapnel, not direct fire. Gravity restored velocity on descent. A falling shell struck flat armor at full force, with no slope to deflect it. German doctrine never considered this threat. Their crews scanned horizontally, not vertically. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. The recoil damage was real. Guns broke springs, barrels bent, but guns could be repaired. Crews could not. By October, German reports described plunging fire. Panther commanders altered tactics, avoided low ground, reinforced roofs with track links. None of it worked reliably. American losses dropped. Panther losses climbed. The technique never became official doctrine. Engineers warned against it. But no one stopped the crews. Thomas Bennett survived the war. His crew destroyed 11 Panthers. 7 died to high-angle fire. He never received a medal. After the war, he returned to Ohio, worked as a machinist, raised a family, and rarely spoke of combat. Decades later, historians connected the dots. Bennett's field innovation mirrored the principle behind modern top attack. Weapons like the Javelin missile. Same physics. Same idea. Bennett died in 2009. His obituary mentioned his service, not his contribution. The M5 gun sits in a museum, its placard silent on the truth. That truth is simple. Innovation in war doesn't come from manuals. It comes from soldiers who see a problem, do the math, and pull the trigger, without waiting for permission. Thomas Bennett was one of them.